Hello, everyone, and welcome to SCORE Fairfield County's live webinar on building mobile apps, advanced software, and AI solutions without code. I'm Peter Talion, the webinar coordinator and a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County. I will be your host today, and our presenter is Colum O'Brien. More on Colum in just a moment. Now, some brief information on SCORE. SCORE is a nonprofit national partner of the Small Business Administration. Locally here in SCORE Fairfield County, we have about 100 volunteers with a wide range of industry, process, and subject matter expertise. We offer three primary value-added services to small business owners. Number one, free one-on-one counseling, face-to-face, video, telephone, or email, which can be accessed via Request Mentor link on our website or via the link on the screen. We also provide educational workshops and webinars, over 100 a year, and we have extensive resources on our website, including a network of subject matter experts at your disposal. Our next live webinar is January 19th at noon, and the topic is SEO Basics, Get Found on Google, and that will be presented by Nalini Golsaran. Look for the specifics on fairfieldcounty.score.org. We also have a large number of archived webinars on a wide range of business topics that can be viewed on demand via our website. Some useful information about today's event. We have set aside time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. If you have a question, please use the Q&A button at any time during the presentation. It is located in the lower part of your screen. Our webinar will end sharply at 1 p.m. to respect your time. The session is being recorded, and the link to the recording will be available at fairfieldcounty.score.org within the next couple of days. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker. Colum O'Brien is a 2x no-code SaaS founder. He works as a part-time no-code developer and speaks at user groups, conferences, and at any other places people want to hear about making software without writing it. I'll now turn it over to Colum. Colum, it's all yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for the introduction, guys. My name is Colum. Before I get more into my introduction and my presentation, I'd like to start by saying the one thing I really don't like about Zoom is I can't gauge the audience. I can't really see what you guys are thinking or what questions you guys may have. So at any time, it would greatly help me out if you have a comment or a question, please put it in the chat. Don't worry about asking a question or waiting till the end, because it would greatly help me out as a speaker if you guys would just give me feedback and ask questions as we go. So let's get into this, building with no code. And as Peter mentioned, I am a no code founder, meaning I've built companies without code. And I've built two of my companies without code. I'm about to build my third. And my first company, Modern Action, was a web platform that would allow people to easily contact their elected officials about different social justice issues. So for example, if we wanted to, let's say, this cause here was caring for family caregivers, we could easily type in our name, email, location, and it would locate our elected officials based off our location, and it would send this individualized message directly to elected officials, kind of as a petition. And then after Modern Action, I started Chewy AI. I'll go more into Chewy later, but Chewy AI is an AI-powered writing generator. So for example, let's say you wanted to generate copy for your website, you could put your product name, your product description, and we would use AI to help you generate content that would help you convert visitors on your site to customers. And like I said, I have done these both without code. And then I'm a part-time Bubble developer. I'll talk more about Bubble in a minute, but Bubble is a no-code software builder. And it's the most powerful one, in my opinion. And I actually work as a developer, developing apps for other people part-time. So how did I become a non-technical technical founder? For as long as I can remember, I'll take you back to the 4th grade when we were learning about professions and different things you can do in life. And the teacher goes, now, what if you want to start a business? And she taught us what an entrepreneur was. And I had no idea what that was at the time, but I immediately thought, if this professional baseball thing doesn't work out, this is what I'm meant to do. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And throughout my life, I've always been, when I had the opportunity, I would always do things like lemonade stands, selling stuff on Amazon, just always trying to start businesses. And finally, I was a junior in college, this is a couple of years ago, and I was trying to get, I was doing all the typical college student businesses. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with drop shipping and like affiliate marketing. I was just trying to start a business, and I kept failing because I didn't have much money. I was a broke college student, and I didn't even have, the money to buy a whole lot of inventory. So I could, let's say, drop ship. Finally, I had this idea for an app, and I was super excited about it. It's going to be my business. I finally figured it out. This is, made my business plan. And I consulted with a few of my uncles who are in business, and they said, I didn't think they thought it was the best idea, but they said, not every idea starts out, not every business starts out, ends up as the original idea intended. So they told me to get started, and I go, cool. How do I build my product? How do I build this app? And they said, you're going to have to learn to code. And at this point, I had no idea really anything about code. If you'd asked me what CSS was, I probably would have told you it was a soccer team or like a soccer league or something. But I was pretty committed. So I sat down, I pulled up an editor, and I found this guy on YouTube, and I started following his coding tutorials. And after like a half hour, I finally learned how to use like the editor that I was using, and I was able to code, I think, Hello World. And I was like, this is cool, but there is no way I'm going to be able to learn how to build an entire mobile app. And at that moment, one of my uncles actually sent me an article. It was a Business Insider article about a guy at Microsoft who used a no-code tool to automate some process in his business, and he got a raise. But to me, it was like this beacon of hope that I could maybe create an MVP, minimal viable product, without code. And I actually reached out to a good friend of mine, and I told him about this app I was making, and he happened to be in the no code space. And he had a podcast, and he sent me his podcast, and I got started with no code. And that's how I became a non-technical tech founder. And the ironic thing about this is I now know a decent amount of code, I'm nowhere near someone who's actually technical, but I know enough to kind of read it and understand it a little bit. So ironically, I was able to learn what I was trying to at the beginning by starting with no code. So I'd like to play a game now. I'd appreciate it if you guys would participate. If you guys would put in the chat whether or not you think a tool or a product is built with code or no code. So the first one we have here, if it will load, is this Civilization. It's some video game. Let me give this second to load. Do you guys think this is built with code or no code? Let me know in the chat. It's a little laggy because we're on Zoom, but oh, code. No code. Yeah, so that's actually, sorry, I didn't see the chat. Cool. Yeah, that's actually built with no code. It's actually built with a tool called Webflow, and I wish I could show you a demo of more. Actually, I'll put the link in the chat. You guys can check it out later. But that's actually built with no code. So that's to give you kind of the idea of, at least from the design perspective, this guy cloned an entire video game design with no code. And that's just the beginning. It gets even more kind of mind blowing. But yeah, next up we have here, guys, this is a no code tool called Builder. And you can create pretty much anything you want with it. Do you guys think this tool itself was built with code or no code? Not what I'm building now within the tool, but the tool itself. Code. Tim says code. Code. Renee says code. Andrew says no code. This tool is actually built with no code. Builder itself was built with Builder. So the CEO and founder actually understood his tool so well that he was able to use it to build another tool, which is very meta, exactly. But that being said, actually in terms and services, it's illegal to use Builder to build a competitor to Builder, which shows you how powerful this is. So, and the reason I mentioned in the title, you can build mobile apps, advanced software and AI solutions without code. I didn't mention static websites because I feel like that's the big thing everybody thinks no code is. Everybody, when you mention no code, people think Squarespace, WordPress, maybe Wix. But in reality, it is much, much, much more advanced than that. And you can build very, very powerful software, such as a no-code tool. So yeah, that's what's possible with no code. And we'll talk more about the future of no code in a minute. But yeah, let's move on. I think that should be, yeah, that should be it. Builder. Cool. So let's get started with no code tools. Now, if you're new to the no code space, it is like a jungle out there. There is so many tools. I got a question. How much do no code and AI overlap? A decent amount, but it's growing bigger and bigger. Actually, let me show you Chewy AI. Thank you for the question. This is what I built with Bubble. I'm going to show you Bubble in a second. Let's just say speaker, founder, and designer, right? So this is all we're gonna give the prompt here is 3 words: speaker, founder, and designer. And it's gonna generate a bio for us. If it will load on Zoom. In the meantime, this is all built with no code, and even it's a basic website builder. So even this basic website builder I built for the most part without code. I added a little bit of code, but actually let me go to the writer here. Right, so we've got this product name, Dee's Lemonade. Describe the product, a homemade lemonade, generate. Fresh. All right, well, it's taking a while to load. I'll put the link in the chat and then you guys can, oh, here we go. Right, so it generates product descriptions. So it took 3 words, and it gave us all of these descriptions. And this I used a service called GTP3, which is an AI kind of open source AI, and you can integrate it via API with no code. And I'll talk more about that later. But more and more, it's becoming easier and easier and easier to integrate AI with no code solutions. So to answer your question, yes, I said it really depends on what you're building, but now it's a very possible, and it's getting easier and easier to add AI to your no code, so to your product that you're building without code. I hope that answers your question. Cool, thank you. Yeah, so the tools we have, as you can see in my picture here, it's when you're first getting started in no code, I definitely felt this. There's so many different no code tools that you can get lost. You don't know which one to start with. And I'm going to kind of go over where to start if you want to get started in no code, and what tool to use for your specific use case. Because questions I get a lot is the two big ones out there is Bubble. And I actually built Modern Action and Chewy AI with Bubble. And the other big one is Webflow. And Webflow is also very powerful, but it's more design. And so people, more design centered, meaning you can create better designs with it. And people often ask, should you use Bubble, Webflow? And the answer is, it just depends on your use case. So let's move on to the next slide. The best mobile and web app builders, in my opinion, first, Glide. Glide takes data from a Google Sheet. So think of your back end as a Google Sheet, and it takes that data and it allows you to build an app around that Google Sheet. I like to tell people to start with Glide when they're first getting into no code, because it does a great job of describing how to build, of kind of implementing how to build an app. So when we're building an app, we tell people the goal is to take data from a back end, think data from a big spreadsheet, and we want to manipulate that data in a way that looks appealing to the user on the front end. And Glide does a really good job about that, because you create your back end with literally a Google Sheet, and then you get to basically make whatever you want in their front end, in their design kind of front end builder. And yeah. And next up we have Adalo. Adalo is, I'd say, the second easiest mobile app builder, but you can build very powerful mobile apps. You can connect backend databases to anything you want via API, as well as they have their own database, but you can also push your app directly to the App Store, both the Apple App Store and the Android App Store. And then DraftBit, I have to be honest, I haven't used that one yet, so don't take my word on it, but I've heard great things, and it's just the best for all-around functionality. So I'd recommend checking that out if you want to build something more complex as a mobile app. But I would be very, Ginny asked, how complicated is the App Store entry process? Actually, they take care of it for you. So I think you just have to get your license, and I think that's $100 once. I could be mistaken about that. And then they take care of pushing it to the App Store for you. Adalo does. DraftBit, again, I haven't used it as much, but I'd recommend checking it out. So yeah, and then the best for static website and landing pages. First, Webflow, and I put a little asterisk next to Webflow because it is not just a landing page builder or a static website builder. You can actually use dynamic data. I've seen some super cool things like marketplaces built on Webflow. That game that I showed you at the beginning was built on Webflow. And And yeah, actually, if you guys look up Chipotle.com, if you look up their website, it's not hosted with Webflow, but the original build was built on Webflow, and then they exported the code and they built off of that. So Chipotle used Webflow to build at one point to build their site. The next site I'd recommend for a personal static website or a landing page is Carrd, CARRD.co. And they're for the money you pay, they're the best for personal sites. They have a bunch of cool templates and they're very affordable. For landing pages, I would recommend Doric. They're similar to Carrd in that it's also very affordable, but they're more focused on landing pages. And then Chewy AI, if you guys want to make a personal site, we generate one for you using Chewy AI. So I thought I'd add that. Next up, and the best overall, again, this is my opinion. People are going to disagree with me. Different people in the no-code space will tell you Webflow's the best, Builder's the best, whatever, everybody kind of has their own. People disagree on the best overall. In my opinion, it's definitely Bubble. You can do the most with Bubble. And what Paul said, why are you recommending other vendors? But I'd say Bubble is definitely softer. Yes, I'm going to talk about softer in a minute. That's a great one, Mark. I see Mark might think softer is the best, but in my opinion, the most powerful is Bubble. The best design is Webflow, and Builder, although it has a steep learning curve, I've seen some very, very cool things built with Builder. I tell people, if you want to take this no-code thing seriously, focus on Bubble or Webflow. And next up, automation. More and more, we're seeing this. Zapier, yes. We're seeing this more and more, people using automation, not just for their businesses, but for their personal life. For example, I know people who set up automations every time they film a TikTok, it automatically goes to like Instagram and Facebook. And you can do that with some no-code automation tools. There's a bunch out there. I would recommend starting with Zapier or Integromat. Zapier's, I think, is slightly easier to use, but I prefer Integromat because you have more functionality. You can add custom API calls within Integromat and within your automation. So any questions about automations? I feel like I didn't go too deep into that. No. Cool. And now there's a lot of niche no-code tools, meaning let's say you want to build specifically a two-sided marketplace, or like specifically in Tangram. I'd actually recommend checking out Tangram just because they're a really cool software. Automation. So automation is when you automate a task. So let's say every time someone enters their email into your landing page, you want to trigger 3 emails to be sent to them. 1, first thanking them for signing up. 2, maybe a couple days later, whatever you'd want the email to say, and maybe another email later down the line. You can do that with automation, right? So you don't have to go on and send those emails by yourself. You can do that by setting up an automation that will do it for you. Does that answer your question, Jenny? Okay. As you can see, a custom marketplace in minutes. This specific no-code tool focuses on custom marketplaces, especially booking apps, I believe. So let's say you want to build, I guess like maybe you have like you own a barbershop, right? And you want to get an app for your barbershop. You could do something like go to Tangram, and they'll basically you can build an a app specifically for your barbershop with their no-code tool. So, and there's a bunch of these niche no-code tools. BuildBox, if you want to build mobile apps and games, I'd highly recommend checking out BuildBox. It's a super cool no-code tool. And ShareTribe. ShareTribe's another marketplace app. So yeah, if you want to, it's very easy for you to get, like if you wanted to do something like, maybe like a shoe, a marketplace for shoes, and you have like a specific type of niche shoe, you could easily build one with ShareTribe. So there's a lot of these niche no-code tools, and they range from anything from marketplaces to, I've even seen some VR, like virtual reality, like I think even AR, they have like, I think they're very primitive at the moment, but there's a very niche no-code tools that you can use to build a lot. I'm not going to say everything, but you can build mostly everything with no-code. So when personally, when I started to get into no-code, I hopped right into Bubble, and hold up, I got some chats here. People need to schedule themselves into your schedule. I don't understand your question. Glenda, can you elaborate on your question? But anyways, so I when I first got into no code, I had jumped right into Bubble, and I quit within 2 weeks just because it was too, the learning curve was too steep. And just because something's no code doesn't exactly mean it's going to be a walk in the park. There is a learning curve, but it is significantly less than actually learning how to build a full app with code. So instead of focusing on Bubble, I jumped into Glide. I learned how to build with Glide. And then from that point, I had a basic understanding of how code and no code works. And I was able to then learn Bubble more easily. So yeah, I'd recommend starting with Glide, Adalo, or Softer. Softer.io is kind of a competitor to Bubble, actually. It's just very, very easy to get started and to build with Bubble. Like if you were a therapist and you wanted to create tools for your clients to put them into your schedule, is Tangram good for that? Yes, I would recommend using Tangram. You could also do Calendly for scheduling. And you could actually integrate Calendly, something like Calendly, into your app using an automation like Integromat. Again, it depends on how, it depends on your use case, and it depends on kind of the functionality you want to have. Now let's talk about the limitations. Oh, sorry. Is there any questions about where to get started? Again, it depends on what you want to build, but Glide, Adalo, and Softer are very, very powerful and still easy to learn. I mean, I say easy. There is some difficulty, but the fact that you can build something you can build a very powerful app with relative low learning curve with these 3 tools. Okay, next up, limitations and use cases. So the biggest use case I've seen for no code is getting an MVP out, and an MVP is a minimal viable product. So it's, think of like the first version of your product, and the goal is just to get users on board, start getting feedback, and validate your idea. No code is really good for that because you can build quickly and cheaply. So, and then once you have users on, once you have paying customers, and you want to get an app built, it's going to be much easier too, because if you go to, let's say, some investor and you say, hey, listen, I have 10,000 users, this many's paying, we're doing this amount a month with this no code, but I need some financial backing to actually build this out with code so we can scale. I promise you that investor is going to love you, as opposed to you going to an investor or technical co-founder and saying, hey, I have this idea. Can we build it with code? I don't have any users. I don't have, I don't have a product yet, but we should do it. Give me money. If you have instead built with no code, validated your idea, you're in a great spot. That being said, it is a limitation. You scaling with no code. For example, you can't build the next Spotify with no code. You can't build the next TikTok with no code, but you can build some MVPs and something similar to those, and get started with no code. I actually know some people who have used Bubble to build out a product, and they've actually, as they've encountered scaling issues, they've actually taken their database off of Bubble and put it in on a backend elsewhere, and connected it via API. So you can still push your no code app quite far. But that being said, if you're trying to build the next like Apple Music, you're going to need code. So yeah. And what's the difference between an app and a website? An app usually has a back end, and a website tends to be more static. So an app, or mobile app, or a web app, there's usually dynamic data where you can, for example, you can make a profile and save that profile. Whereas a website, it's just more static. Any questions before I go into some resources? Matthew has a question. What's up, Matt? How do you as an app creator keep up with OS updates and conflicts, bugs on using no code builders? Yes. Is there, it depends on the tool. If you're using a tool, say Bubble, I have any bug I've encountered with Bubble, maybe once, it's been Bubble's fault. It's usually you as the builder's fault. And when you compare it to actually coding, there's a lot less bugs. Yeah, and OS updates, yeah. So to answer your question, most of the time, if there's a bug, it's your fault by not using the tool correctly, not the tool itself's fault. Does the host builder take care of that? Yes. OS updates, the host, and let's say use $1 to build a mobile app, they take care of that. But yeah. Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah. Every time iOS has a new release, the app's going to be compatible. The app builder is going to make sure it's compatible. So even if no require non-trivial learning curve, how should someone determine that they are capable of that? What skills? Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so as corny as it sounds, if you want to get good at no code, the first thing I'd recommend is be willing to sit down and be frustrated. Just sit down and keep going and have patience, because there is a learning curve and it can be frustrating, and you kind of have to view it as the time you spend. For example, I've had days where I've spent the entire day trying to figure something out and I didn't. And I'm just like, did I just waste like 8 hours? But because I put that time in, it became easier and easier to build with no code. So I'd say perseverance is a really great quality to have when you get into no code, as well as problem solving, right? A lot of no code, I guess with business itself, excuse me, it doesn't have anything, a lot has to do with how resourceful you are. So with no code, pretty much, there's basically always a way to build it. You just have to figure out how. Is it going to be connecting an API? Is it going to be, you using the tool itself? Is it going to be you hiring a Fiverr dev to create some script for you and then integrate it with your no-code tool? But pretty much, if you can be resourceful enough, you can build anything. I truly believe that. And as well as problem solving. A lot of no code's just, what's the problem? How can we solve it? So yeah, thank you for your question, Matt. Paul says, if one can be brilliant without code, coders will find them, right? Yeah, so if I understand you correctly, Paul, I think you mean if you build an app without code and it's a great app, you'll be able to work with some technical people to build it out more, possibly. I've actually found that another benefit of starting with no code is if you do at some point want to build an app with code, there's a lot more empathy for your technical co-founder. So if your co-founder is doing all the tech, if you're a co-founder, you're still going to be very tied to your product. Look at a guy like Elon Musk, for example. He actually, I don't think that's a good example, but even I guess like Steve Jobs, we'll use him as an example. He was still even though he wasn't coding or building the computers itself, I don't think he was, I could be mistaken. But he was still very, very attached to the product, right? So if you're building a product and you have empathy because you built an app, whether it be with code or no code, and you can kind of empathize and talk with your technical co-founder, I truly believe that helps the dynamic a lot. And it helps the product a lot too. Being resourceful, yep. Andrew, yes. Yes. I'm gonna put my email in the chat at the end, Matt. Shoot me an email and I'll be able to give you a better answer. Matt wants to know, is there a no-code tool for building a mobile scanning app within OCR? Like it can scan it and turn a photo to text. Yes, you can do that with Bubble, but there may be an easier way to do it, and I can look into that for you. Speaking of no-code resources, speaking of no-code resources, I'd like to kind of put you onto some in case you have some more questions. The first is Entrepreneur, and this guy, Max Miro, a friend of mine, basically builds no-code tools on Twitch. And I think he has a database of over 400, I think. I could be mistaken about that, but I think he has 400 different tools that he's somewhat familiar with, that he's at least checked out. So if he's a great guy to look into. And if you have any questions, he's a great guy to reach out to. He's also got he's got a bunch of streams where he basically just takes an idea and he builds out his idea with the no-code tool live on Twitch. Andrew, Ginny added Adobe has a OCR function that is pretty decent. Yeah, actually, I'm not too familiar with Adobe, but I'm sure you could do something by finding a similar software to Adobe and integrating it into your no-code app with an API. So yeah, anything's possible, again, with no-code. You just have to understand how to do it. And then, I definitely recommend checking out Max. Next resource is No Code, No Problem. Actually, my good friend Ryan, who actually got me into no code, runs this. It's a podcast. And again, if you guys have any questions, I'd recommend checking out the podcast. And he's a great guy. If you send him an email, DM him, tell him I sent you. He'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have. But yeah, it's a cool no code podcast. And I'd recommend it. And then the last thing, on Twitter, there is a great community of no-code builders. If you have any questions, or if you just want support, or to get into no-code, just tweet something and say hashtag no code, and you're going to get traction. There's going to be a bunch of people who support you and are willing to help you with your question, or even if you just say, hey, I'm new to hashtag no code, where do I start? Or, hey, I'm going to start my hashtag no code journey. You're going to get a ton of support. It's one of the nicest communities, I feel like, online. So everybody's supporting each other, which really helps when you're trying to build an app and a business. So yeah, I'd highly recommend checking that out. And I think we only have 5 more minutes. Am I right, Peter or Tim? How much time do we have?
You've got 20 minutes.
Okay.
We've got till 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock, perfect. Let me bring back the chat. Here we go, Q&A. Use for Forex. Harold, I'm not familiar with Forex. To be honest, I'm not sure. Guys, let me put my contact info in the chat. You guys can email me if you guys have any questions. Renee asked, am I in LA? I'm actually in San Diego. Yes, Matt's exactly correct. No code tools can access Forex APIs. I'm still just not sure what Forex is, but I'm sure there's an API you can integrate with. Let me go ahead to the chat. Cool. Guys, if you guys want to find me, go to and visit that website. All my contact info is in there. And I'd be happy to answer any question with more detail later, but keep the questions coming. Say I want to build an app that identifies an object that already exists, but the subject matter is different. Where do I start making the app, or do I through of processing the pattern? Okay, I'm not exactly sure what you mean, anonymous attendee. If you could elaborate, that would be great.
Colum, I believe you put your address, .com, just to hosts and panelists. I think you have to change it to everyone.
Oh, that's my mistake. Cool. I'll do that right now. Panelists and attendees. Cool. Cool. All right. So the next thing I'd like to do, I'd like to give you a demo of what it's like to build in Bubble. And again, keep the questions coming. I can answer it while we build, but let's take the next 15 minutes or so to build a basic app in Bubble. So this is Bubble. This is, again, my favorite no-code tool. Go ahead and hit new app. So it will load. Cool. So, guys, does anyone want to build something? We're going to build something basic. I was thinking a shopping list. Let's build a shopping list. Close the assistant. Or a shopping app. Shopping list app here. Let's go to add new page. Create. So the first thing we're going to do here, let me check the chat again. Q&A. Cool. Ooh, Matt, good question. If I want to have a website developed and I want to outsource it, are there agencies that will specifically do no code development, and are there advantages to working with them than with traditional web app development agencies? Yes, 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 yes. There are. There's a good amount out there, and in the next 5-10 years, they're going to explode. Just wait. The advantage is they're so much cheaper, and you're getting a quality product because it's an actual agency developing it for you. I actually work for an agency called Millium Labs, and they specifically use Bubble to help people get an MVP out. But yeah. There's a lot of no code agencies, and they're big now. They're going to be even bigger in 5-10 years. So yeah. But yeah, let's good question, Matt. Let's get started with this. Let's make an app that will, when you type in a shopping item, it will add it to your list. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna build an input, just like this. And again, very basic Bubble design. You can change the design to however you want using kind of the design tools here. Again, this is if you're unfamiliar with Bubble, this tends to be tends to look more complicated. I promise it gets easier if you just keep sticking to it. So we'll have this be our input, and we'll say we'll call this enter item. Enter item, right? And then we're gonna make a button that saves the item to our shopping list. So save, right? And then we're going to need to display our shopping list. So we're going to make a repeating group here. And we're going to fill that out later. Put a text inside the repeating group, and it's going to have our shopping lists, right? So we're going to go to our data. We're going to create a new data type, and we're going to call this shopping. Cool. Create. And we're going to add a new data field. We're going to have item. And so what I'm doing here is I'm creating our database, right? And actually, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make every user have their groceries saved to their person. So for every profile, it's going to have a list of groceries attached to it. So we have user that's already made. So create a new field. We're going to call this shopping. Field type is shopping, right? And so what we're doing here is we're creating a link between our shopping database and our user database. Hold on, I have a question. Do any of these website app builders integrate with websites? Specifically, inputs from the app are written to the website and vice versa. Can you elaborate on what you mean? If what you're asking is, what actually I've actually worked for. Yes, it will. You can. It's your database. You can call it whatever you want. It's based. The title here is just so that you know what to identify that data as. So I've actually worked for a company that they were built with code, but they actually use no code to integrate with the code that they had and build faster. So they built a mobile app completely with code, and then they wanted to add different features and expand to more of a web app CRM, and they did that with no code. And then so that they could get it to market faster. And then while we built it out with no code, they had already started building it out with code. So you can integrate an app that you built yourself with code with an app with no code via APIs. Where is the data saved? Does Bubble have a cloud server? Yes, I'm not too familiar with all this, but Bubble actually uses, I believe, CloudFront. That's a good question. They use I think S2 for storage, S2 or S3 for storage, but they I think they're hosted. Yeah, I think they use AWS for hosting, or AWS for database, and CloudFront or Cloudflare for hosting. This isn't really my neck of the woods, but yeah. Okay. Users submit advanced webinars. So I heart norwalk.com and the event rights to. Yeah, you can do that. You can connect that. In the event. Yeah. So yeah, as if yeah. Yeah. You could actually create in Bubble. You could create an app that actually hosts the webinar itself, and with another tool. So Al Gore, I believe is the name. You can actually use that in Bubble to create a webinar. But yes, I hope that answers your question. Cool. So we have 9 minutes here. Let's see if we can build something. Right. So we have we're gonna have shopping and data source. We're gonna have current user shopping. Yeah, and we're actually gonna make this text. Text shopping item. So we're gonna finish that in a second. So when we create a workflow, we want to save what's in this text box to the database, right? So the way we do that is we're going to press data, make, yeah, and we're going to make it a list. So we're going to make changes to a list of things. And actually, I need to go back to our database and change this to list. So we're gonna say items list field type text, and this is a list. Cool. Create. We go back to our workflow section. Shopping. Let's change. Let's just say do shopping. Check back the Q&A. I have an idea of an app to identify a product where you take a picture of it. The basic idea already exists. For example, a plant identifier. And could you, Kathy, can you elaborate on that? I have an idea for an app to identify a product when you take a picture of it. Okay, yes. You can do that actually with Bubble. There's a plugin. Oh, I'll show you guys the plugins. So here in the Bubble plugins page, you can add a bunch of plugins. So for example, any load. Plugins allow you to connect to a lot of other apps and do a lot of things that Bubble itself wouldn't allow you to do. For example, with this Google Material icons, you have access to all the Google icons. With Toolbox, it allows you to add JavaScript to your Bubble app. Multi-select dropdown, it adds a dropdown that you can add to your app. Sidebar menu adds a menu to the top of your page, and it makes it super easy to have kind of a, I'll show you here with Modern Action, if you look at the sidebar menu here, it pops out. I didn't use the plugin for that, but that plugin makes it super easy to add that functionality. But to answer your question, Kathy, there is a plugin that you can. I'm gonna look at the images. I might be able to find it. Images that kind of helps you analyze the image and use AI to kind of get to identify it. I don't know how if you can do plant itself, you might have to look into some API for that, but I know they definitely have an image and or image info. Yes, image recognition, right? So it's this plugin itself. I'm just like flower tree table. Yep. So birthday party. So this plugin here, you'd have to buy it for $39, but you could then integrate that service, that image recognition service, directly with your app. I hope that answers your question, Kathy. I'm going to go back to the chat. Thank you so much, Ez. Again, if you guys have any questions, if I can't answer it myself, I'll be able to put you in touch with someone who can. And we have 4 minutes. Yeah, any other questions, feel free to ask them now. But yeah, I hope you guys understand, like, this is the power of no code. Like, what Kathy just described of an app that would kind of recognize different plants and trees or whatever. There's literally a plugin here that will do that. So at least that's what I think it does. But I'm sure there's other plugins. See, there's a not safe for work image checker. This will use AI to see if someone uploads an image that is explicit, and it will like blur it out. I believe this is what that plugin does. So there's some super cool plugins here. And thank you for your time. Thank you guys. Sorry I didn't get to fully build out the shopping list. But yes, again, thank you guys for coming. And is there any other questions? We have 3 minutes. We have can you use a note for restaurant retail with 1,200 customers? What do you mean by restaurant retail? There's actually specifically a no-code builders. Actually don't know. I know there's a startup called Blissmo that you could use to easily create an app for your restaurant, and it included pickup and delivery automatically. It was included within their builder, and it was super easy to use. I'm not sure where they're at now, but Blissmo is the name. We have a restaurant in a retail space with 1,200 customers. If you're looking for an app, Brenda, if you're looking for an app for your retail space, with 12,000, I'm sorry. Yeah. I would look into a few different no-code tools before to see if it makes sense to go in one of those directions before coding itself. But if you have 12,000 customers, that's not really something to bat an eye at. And I think it does make, depending on your ROI, I think it does make a lot of sense to consider using code for that, because 12,000 customers is a lot. Is the richness of the, but yeah, another thing you could do is build something quickly with no code, see if it will support your 12,000 customers. And if it does, you're good. And if it doesn't, you can always go to code. The richness of yourself. Yeah. All right. We have
I think we've got time for one more question, Colum.
Cool. I see. Yeah. So I think that's it with questions.
Good. Well, thank you. Thank you very, very much, Colum. You covered a tremendous range of content very, very effectively. And we thank you very, very much for answering all the questions in the chat. That was really first class. So thank you. As a reminder to everyone on this webinar, we are recording it and the materials are available within a couple of days on the fairfieldcounties.score.org website. Our next live webinar is this Wednesday, January the 19th at noon, and the topic is SEO Basics, Get Found on Google with Nalini Goldsman presenting. Again, SCORE offers free individual counseling, so please use the link on the screen or visit our website and click Request a Mentor. Also, please fill out your evaluations that have been sent at the end of this webinar. On behalf of SCORE, I'd like to thank all of you for attending the live webinar, and a big, big thank you to Colum. And that will close out this webinar. Have a great day, everyone.